A poor teenager helped save the life of a millionaire's wife, but when asked what he wanted in return, his answer left everyone in tears. Tyson woke up to the loud buzzing of his old alarm clock. He sat up in his small bed, rubbing his eyes, and glanced at the eviction notice still lying on the kitchen table. He wished he could tear it up, but that wouldn't change anything. His mom had left for work already, another early shift at the diner. Tyson pulled on his cleanest shirt, grabbed his books, and headed out the door. Outside, the morning air was fresh, but the neighborhood had its usual look: peeling paint on the buildings, a few dogs barking from behind fences. Tyson walked to school, his steps brisk. He passed through the upscale neighborhood as usual, the one where the buildings seemed to touch the sky. He couldn't help but look up at them. He wondered how it would feel to live somewhere so big. A sleek black car pulled out from one of the lots. Tyson moved a bit faster, feeling small in its shadow. His sneakers hit the pavement steadily, taking him past the Collins Enterprise building, a giant tower of glass. The doors opened, letting a rush of cool air spill out for a moment. Tyson kept walking, his eyes just glancing over the suited men and women bustling in and out, too busy to notice someone like him. After dropping off a book at the public library, he stuffed another one in his backpack and carried on towards school. He had just crossed the street, stepping onto the sidewalk by Collins Enterprise again, when something caught his eye. There was a woman, and she was pregnant. He watched as she tried to balance herself, her knees shaking slightly. Tyson's eyes narrowed. She didn't look okay. Her face was flushed, and she was holding her belly. He thought maybe someone would help her, but everyone just walked past, some glanced but kept going, caught up in their own lives. He hesitated for a second, his feet almost glued to the ground. His mom always told him to be careful, not to get into trouble, especially in this part of town. But something in him told him to move. Without thinking, Tyson took a step forward, then another, and then he was running. "Hey, hey! Are you okay?" he called out as he approached her. The woman looked at him, her eyes wide, and then she stumbled. Tyson moved faster. He caught her arm just as her legs buckled. She was falling, but he got there just in time. He kneeled with her, trying to keep her steady. The ground was hot against his jeans, but he didn't let go. "Thank you," she said, her voice strained, barely a whisper. She was breathing hard, and he could see sweat on her forehead. "Just stay still, okay?" "I think you need help," Tyson said, trying to keep his voice calm. People started to slow down, watching. Tyson noticed their stares. He felt his heart pound, not just from the effort of running but because of how everyone was looking at him. A couple of people whispered. One guy even frowned, like Tyson was doing something wrong. "Do you need water or?" Tyson began to ask, but the woman winced, bending forward more. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw a security guard coming over from the building entrance. The guard's eyes were on Tyson, suspicious. The man walked faster, his hand resting near the radio on his belt. "Hey," the guard called out sharply. Tyson swallowed hard. He didn't move, didn't dare to let go of the woman. She was clutching his arm now, and she looked scared. He didn't want her to fall. He didn't want to let her down. But the guard's eyes were full of doubt. "I'm helping her," Tyson shouted, his voice cracking a bit. He held up his free hand as the guard got closer. "She's not okay." Before the guard could respond, another voice cut through the commotion. "Let him through." It was loud, commanding. Tyson turned his head and saw a man in a suit. He looked important. He was standing on the stairs of the building. The guard stopped, hesitated, then nodded and backed off a little. "Just keep her steady, son," the man said, making his way down towards them. Tyson could see the man's face clearer now, tight with concern, his eyes locked on the woman. Tyson realized it must be her husband. He tightened his grip on her arm, hoping she wouldn't slip. "It's okay," Tyson said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. He felt her breathing start to even out just a little. His knees were beginning to ache against the hard ground, but he didn't move. "Sir," Tyson heard someone from behind him. "An ambulance is on the way." The man in the suit, Mr. Collins, Tyson guessed, reached them and knelt beside his wife. He touched her shoulder lightly. "Anna, I'm here," he said softly. She looked up at him, tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered again, this time to Tyson, her grip relaxing slightly. Mr. Collins looked at Tyson, then, his expression softening. You saved her. What's your name?" "Tyson," he said almost too quietly. "Tyson Carter." Mr. Collins nodded, glancing at his wife before looking back at Tyson. "Listen, Tyson, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything I can do for you? Anything at all?" Tyson blinked, his mouth opened, but no words came out. He didn't know what to say. He had never been in a position like this before, someone important asking him what he wanted. He hesitated, looking at Mr. Collins, then at the crowd around them, and finally down at Mrs. Collins, whose breathing was beginning to steady. What could he ask for? The thoughts rushed through his mind, but he felt stuck, unable to voice anything. All he knew was he was glad she was okay. That was enough, wasn't it? The sound of sirens echoed in the distance, getting closer, and Tyson took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything all at once. Tyson kept holding on to Mrs. Collins, his knees on the rough sidewalk, his heart racing. He looked up, seeing the ambulance turn the corner, its red and blue lights flashing. The siren blared, drowning out the murmurs of the gathering crowd. The people around them were still watching, a mix of curiosity and concern on their faces. Tyson just focused on Mrs. Collins. She looked like she was in pain, her breathing shallow, but she was trying to stay calm. The ambulance stopped, and two paramedics rushed out, wheeling a stretcher toward them. Mr. Collins stood up, waving them over. Tyson stepped back a little, finally releasing his grip on her. One of the paramedics, a tall man with a stern face, looked at Tyson, then nodded as if to say, "Good job." Tyson felt a small relief at that, but the tension still gripped his chest. "Let's get her on the stretcher," the paramedic said, guiding Mrs. Collins with care. Tyson watched as they helped her lie down, strapping her in. Mr. Collins stayed by her side, his face filled with worry. "Is she going to be okay?" Tyson found himself asking, his voice barely audible. Mr. Collins glanced back at him, then gave a tight nod. "She will be, thanks to you, Tyson," he said, his voice sincere, but his eyes distant, focused on his wife. The paramedics began wheeling her toward the ambulance, and Mr. Collins turned back to Tyson. He took a deep breath and stepped closer, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a business card and held it out to Tyson. "Take this," Mr. Collins said, his voice a little hoarse. "Call me, please. I want to do something for you. You've done more for my family than you could possibly know." Tyson looked at the card. It had a logo at the top, Collins Enterprise, and Mr. Collins's name and number below. Tyson hesitated, then took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he said, unsure of what else to say. The card felt heavy, like it was worth a lot more than just a piece of paper. Mr. Collins nodded, then hurried to the ambulance. He climbed in, and they closed the doors. Tyson stood there, watching as the ambulance pulled away, the siren fading into the distance. He was suddenly aware of how quiet it was. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, people moving along as if nothing had happened. Tyson looked around. The security guard was still there, a little further back, his arms crossed. He wasn't glaring at Tyson anymore, just watching. Tyson didn't know what to make of it, so he turned away, slipping the business card into his pocket. He picked up his backpack, brushing off the dirt, and slung it over his shoulder. "Hey, kid," a voice called. Tyson looked up. It was the security guard, walking toward him now. The guard scratched his head, looking a little uncomfortable. Sorry about earlier," he said, not quite meeting Tyson's eyes. I thought you were up to something." Tyson just nodded, not sure what to say. He wasn't angry, just tired. He understood why the guard had reacted that way, but that didn't make it any easier. "It's fine," Tyson said, his voice flat. The guard nodded, then looked away, clearing his throat. "You did good, kid. You really helped her." Tyson shrugged, but a small part of him felt proud. "Thanks," he mumbled. With that, Tyson turned and began walking away. His legs were sore, his knees aching from kneeling for so long. He walked past the Collins Enterprise building again, the glass reflecting the sunlight, almost blinding him. He squinted and looked down at the pavement, trying to push away the feeling that he didn't belong here. As he walked, Tyson pulled out the business card again, staring at it. He didn't know what to do. Should he call Mr. Collins? What would he even say? The thought made him nervous, and he slipped the card back into his pocket, deciding to think about it later. He walked all the way to school, his backpack feeling heavier than usual. By the time he got there, he was late, and the halls were mostly empty. He slipped into his classroom quietly, hoping not to draw any attention. His teacher, Miss Alvarez, paused mid-sentence as Tyson took his seat. "You're late, Tyson," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Sorry," Tyson said, avoiding her gaze. He kept his head down, pulling out his notebook. He could feel the eyes of some of his classmates on him, but he didn't look up. He just wanted the day to end. Miss Alvarez continued with the lesson, her voice fading into the background as Tyson stared at his notebook. He couldn't concentrate. His mind kept going back to what had happened earlier, the fear in Mrs. Collins's eyes, the way she'd clung to him, the way the guard had looked at him like he was trouble, and then Mr. Collins offering him help. It was all too much. When the bell finally rang, Tyson packed up his things slowly. He was the last one out of the classroom. Miss Alvarez called his name just as he reached the door. "Tyson, a word, please," she said, her voice gentle. Tyson turned back, walking over to her desk. She looked at him, her eyes kind but questioning. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "You seem distracted today." Tyson hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just had a rough morning." Miss Alvarez studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But if you need to talk, I'm here, okay?" "Thanks, Miss Alvarez," Tyson said, managing a small smile. He left the classroom, heading out into the hallway. The school was noisy, kids rushing to their next classes, their laughter echoing off the walls. Tyson felt out of place, like he was disconnected from everything around him. He pushed through the front doors, stepping out into the afternoon sun. He decided to head home instead of going to his next class. He just needed some time to think. As he walked, he kept replaying Mr. Collins's words in his head, "Call me, please." It was such a simple request, but to Tyson, it felt huge. When he finally reached his apartment building, he climbed the stairs slowly, his legs still sore. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The place was quiet, his mom still at work. He glanced at the eviction notice on the table, the red letters bold and threatening. Tyson pulled out the business card again, staring at it. He took a deep breath, then grabbed the old phone from the counter. His hands were shaking as he dialed the number. He listened to the ringing, his heart pounding in his ears. "Hello," a voice answered. It was Mr. Collins. Tyson swallowed, his throat dry. Hi. It's Tyson. Tyson Carter." There was a pause, then Mr. Collins's voice softened. "Tyson. I'm glad you called. How are you, son?" I'm okay," Tyson said. He glanced at the eviction notice again, his eyes lingering on it. "I wanted to, talk about what you said earlier." "Of course," Mr. Collins said. "Tell me what you need." Tyson hesitated, his voice catching in his throat. He thought of his mom, how hard she worked, how tired she always looked. He took another deep breath. "My mom," he began, his voice trembling. "She needs a job. She's been out of work for a while, and we're about to lose our place." There was silence on the other end, and Tyson felt his heart sink. Maybe he'd overstepped. Maybe he shouldn't have asked. But then Mr. Collins spoke, his voice steady. "I understand, Tyson. I want to help. Let me see what I can do. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'll arrange something." Tyson blinked, barely believing what he was hearing. "Really?" "Really," Mr. Collins said. You helped my family. It's the least I can do. Tyson felt a weight lift off his shoulders, a feeling of hope he hadn't had in a long time. Thank you, he whispered. Of course. I'll be in touch, Mr. Collins said, and the call ended. Tyson put the phone down, his hands still trembling. He looked at the eviction notice one more time, then crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to smile. That night, Tyson tossed and turned, his mind racing with the events of the day. He kept replaying the moment Mrs. Collins stumbled, the way he had run to her without thinking. He couldn't help but feel a surge of nerves every time he remembered what he had asked Mr. Collins. It wasn't something small, it was about changing his and his mom's entire future. It was about making things better for her. And now he was about to meet Mr. Collins again. The idea scared him more than anything else he had done. The next morning, his mom was in the kitchen making breakfast, the smell of scrambled eggs filling the small apartment. Tyson hesitated before telling her about his plans. He wasn't even sure what was going to happen yet. Morning, sweetheart, she said, giving him a tired smile. Her eyes were lined, her hands rough from the long shifts she had been working. You sleep okay? Tyson shrugged. Yeah, sort of, he paused, then blurted it out. I met someone yesterday, a guy named Mr. Collins. He said he could help you find a job. His mom looked up from the pan, her eyes widening. What? Tyson, what are you talking about? She turned off the stove, facing him fully. Tyson took a breath, trying to explain everything as clearly as he could. He told her about Mrs. Collins, about how she had almost fallen and how he had helped her. He explained that Mr. Collins was her husband and that he had promised to help. His mom just stared at him for a moment, her face a mix of disbelief and worry. Tyson, you shouldn't be asking strangers for help. What if? He offered, Mom, Tyson cut in, his voice urgent. He said I saved his wife. He asked if he could do something for me, and I told him about you. I just thought, it's worth a shot, right? She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. Tyson, you shouldn't be carrying all this on your shoulders. You're still a kid. Tyson shook his head. I had to do something, Mom. We can't keep going like this, he said, lowering his voice, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him again. Just meet with him, okay? Please? She looked down at the floor, then nodded slowly. All right. I'll go. But Tyson, if this doesn't work out, we'll figure something else out. Okay? Tyson nodded, his chest feeling tight. He hoped with everything in him that this would work out. Later that morning, Tyson walked with his mom toward the Collins Enterprise building. His mom was dressed in her best clothes, but Tyson knew they were still worn, faded from too many washes. She walked with her head held high, though, and he admired her strength. When they reached the building, Tyson saw Mr. Collins waiting by the entrance. He looked out of place, standing there in his expensive suit, checking his watch and glancing around. When his eyes landed on Tyson, he smiled and stepped forward. Tyson, he called out, waving them over. Tyson and his mom walked up to him, and Mr. Collins held out his hand to Tyson's mom. You must be Mrs. Carter. I'm James Collins. It's so nice to meet you. Tyson's mom shook his hand, a polite smile on her face. Thank you for seeing us, Mr. Collins, she said, her voice steady, though Tyson could tell she was nervous. Please, call me James, he said warmly. He gestured toward the building. Why don't we go inside? We can talk more comfortably in my office. Tyson followed them inside, his eyes wide as they entered the lobby. Everything was sleek, polished, and bustling with people in suits. He stayed close to his mom, feeling small in the huge space. The receptionist gave them a curious glance but didn't say anything as Mr. Collins led them to the elevator. The elevator ride was silent, Tyson staring at the floor numbers lighting up as they rose. When they stepped out, Mr. Collins led them to a large office with a glass wall that overlooked the city. Tyson had never seen anything like it. Please, have a seat, Mr. Collins said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. Tyson and his mom sat down, and Mr. Collins settled into the chair behind his desk. So, Tyson told me a bit about your situation, Mr. Collins began, looking at Tyson's mom. I want to help. I owe your son a great deal for what he did for my wife. Tyson's mom looked down for a moment, then met Mr. Collins's gaze. I appreciate that, Mr. Collins, James, but I don't want charity. I want to earn what I get. Mr. Collins smiled. I understand, Mrs. Carter. I'm not offering charity, I'm offering an opportunity. We have a position open here in our building services team. It's honest work, and it comes with benefits. I think you'd be a great fit. Tyson watched his mom's face as she processed what Mr. Collins was saying. He could see the hesitation, the doubt. Building services, she asked. You mean like maintenance? Mr. Collins nodded. Yes. It's mostly maintenance, keeping things running smoothly. It's not easy work, but it's steady, and it's important to the company. His mom was quiet for a long time. Tyson could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped her purse. He wanted to say something, to tell her it was okay to take it, but he stayed quiet. Finally, she nodded. All right, she said softly. If you're sure, I'll take the job. Mr. Collins smiled, standing up and holding out his hand. Welcome aboard, Mrs. Carter. I'll have HR get the paperwork ready. Tyson's mom stood up, shaking his hand again, her eyes shiny like she was trying not to cry. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking just a little. Tyson's mom stood up, shaking his hand again, her eyes shiny like she was trying not to cry. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking just a little. Mr. Collins turned to Tyson, giving him a nod. You did a good thing, Tyson. You should be proud of yourself. Tyson nodded, feeling his face grow warm. He didn't know what to say, so he just said, Thank you, sir. As they left the office, Tyson could see his mom's eyes were wet. She put her arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. I don't know what I'd do without you, Tyson, she whispered. Tyson just hugged her back, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't over, but it was a start. Tyson and his mom left the Collins Enterprise building, walking down the street in silence. The air felt different, lighter. The heavy weight that had been looming over their heads for weeks seemed to have shifted, giving them both a brief but much-needed sense of hope. Tyson looked up at his mom, catching a glimpse of the small smile that lingered on her lips. She looked at him and squeezed his shoulder gently. I think we might have just caught a break, sweetheart, she said, her voice filled with a mix of hope and caution. We've got to be careful, but maybe, just maybe, things are going to change. Tyson nodded, though he didn't want to get too excited. He didn't want to jinx it. Yeah, maybe, he said, giving her a small smile. They headed home, taking the bus. Tyson could see his mom glancing out the window, her eyes distant, lost in thought. He could imagine what was going through her mind, thinking of the bills, the rent, the eviction notice that still sat crumpled in the trash. But now there was a plan. Now there was a job, and that meant hope. The next morning, Tyson woke up early. His mom had to go to the Collins Enterprise for her first day. Tyson felt the excitement as he watched her get ready, pulling on the uniform that Mr. Collins had arranged for her to pick up the previous evening. It was a simple navy blue outfit, but to Tyson, it looked like something much more. It was a symbol of hope, a sign that they weren't defeated yet. His mom looked at herself in the small mirror by the door, adjusting the collar of her shirt. She turned to Tyson, giving him a nervous smile. How do I look? She asked. Tyson grinned. You look like someone who's about to change everything. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You've always been my biggest supporter, kiddo. Tyson watched her leave, and then he grabbed his backpack, heading out for school. His walk to school felt different. He passed by the Collins Enterprise building again, and this time, instead of just a tall, distant structure, it felt more personal. It was the place that was giving his mom a chance. He walked past it, staring up at the glass windows, feeling a mix of pride and nerves. At school, Tyson tried his best to focus on his classes, but his thoughts kept drifting back to his mom. He wondered how her day was going, whether she was nervous, whether the other employees were treating her kindly. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. When lunchtime rolled around, Tyson found himself sitting alone at a table in the cafeteria. He wasn't in the mood to chat with anyone. He pulled out his sandwich, unwrapping it slowly, lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, he heard a voice. "Hey, Tyson." Tyson looked up to see a couple of his classmates, Marcus and Jonah, standing there with trays in hand. They weren't exactly his friends, but they weren't bullies either, just two guys from his math class. "Hey," Tyson said, nodding at them. Marcus sat down across from Tyson while Jonah took the seat beside him. "We heard what happened yesterday," Marcus said, a small smile on his face. "You were all over social media, man." Tyson blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" Jonah pulled out his phone, tapping on the screen before holding it out to Tyson. On the screen was a picture of him kneeling beside Mrs. Collins on the sidewalk, helping her stay steady. It must have been taken by one of the people in the crowd. The caption read, "Teen saves pregnant woman outside Collins Enterprise. Real hero, *." Tyson stared at the screen, his stomach flipping. He hadn't realized anyone had taken a picture. He didn't even think about it, he just did what felt right. Seeing himself on the screen, seeing all the likes and comments below, felt strange. "You're like a hero or something," Jonah said, laughing. "Everyone's talking about it." Tyson handed the phone back, feeling his face grow hot. I just helped her," he said quietly. Marcus grinned. "Well, it's still cool. You're famous now, man." Tyson shook his head, feeling embarrassed. "I'm not famous. It was nothing." Jonah shrugged. "Maybe to you, but it looked like a big deal to everyone else." Tyson didn't know what to say. He just nodded, hoping they would drop it. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. He wasn't used to people looking at him like that. He just wanted things to go back to normal. But he could tell that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. When school ended, Tyson walked out of the building, pulling his backpack over his shoulder. He saw Marcus and Jonah talking with some other kids, and they waved at him. He waved back, but he kept walking. He didn't want to be pulled into any conversations about what had happened. He just wanted to get home. As he walked, he noticed a couple of people looking at him, kids from school, a few adults passing by. He heard someone say, "That's the kid from the Collins thing." Tyson kept his head down, walking faster. He didn't want the attention. He didn't want people staring at him like he was someone special. When he finally reached his apartment building, he felt a sense of relief. He climbed the stairs, unlocking the door and stepping inside. His mom wasn't home yet, but he knew she would be soon. He dropped his backpack on the floor, collapsing onto the couch. He closed his eyes, trying to clear his mind. A few hours later, Tyson heard the front door open. He sat up quickly, looking over as his mom stepped inside. She looked tired, her hair a little messy, but she was smiling. "Hey, Mom," Tyson said, getting up and walking over to her. "How was it?" His mom set her bag down, exhaling deeply. It was good. "Hard work, but good," she said, smiling at him, her eyes a little watery. "Everyone was nice. I think I can do this, Tyson." Tyson grinned, feeling a rush of pride. "I knew you could." She pulled him into a hug, holding him close. "I couldn't have done it without you. You know that," she said. Tyson hugged her back, his heart swelling. "We're a team, right?" She nodded, pulling back and brushing her hand over his cheek. "Always." As the evening went on, Tyson and his mom sat down to dinner, simple sandwiches, but it felt like a feast considering what they had been through. His mom told him about her day, about how Mr. Collins had checked in on her, how the other employees had been kind to her, how she had been assigned tasks that she knew she could handle. "And they said I did a good job," she said, her voice filled with pride. I think this might actually work out, Tyson." Tyson nodded, taking a bite of his sandwich. "I think so too, Mom." As they finished their meal, Tyson couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Things were changing, but for once, it felt like they were changing for the better. His mom had a job. They had a chance. And maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. The next morning, Tyson found himself back in the routine of school, but nothing really felt the same. As he walked through the hallways, he kept noticing the way people looked at him, some with admiration, others just curious. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. He could hear whispers as he passed by, and even though no one approached him directly, the feeling of being noticed didn't sit well with him. He couldn't focus in class, his mind drifting to his mom's first day at work. He hoped it went well, hoped she could finally find a bit of stability. He knew she needed it, they both did. The weight of responsibility still hung over him. He wanted things to change, and this job felt like their one shot. As soon as the final bell rang, Tyson grabbed his backpack and headed out, walking quickly through the front doors of the school. He didn't want to linger and talk to anyone. He just wanted to get home. He had to check in on his mom, hear how her day went. He walked through the city streets, the sounds of cars and people blending together in a steady hum. The Collins Enterprise building loomed up ahead. Tyson slowed his steps as he approached, looking up at the tall glass structure. He remembered the way Mrs. Collins had looked. The fear in her eyes, the way she had leaned on him, trusting him even though they were strangers. He never thought that one moment would change so much for his family. "Hey, kid," a voice called out, pulling him out of his thoughts. Tyson turned, his eyes widening in surprise. Mr. Collins was standing near the entrance, waving him over. Tyson hesitated for a second, then walked toward him. "Mr. Collins," Tyson said, giving a small nod. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." Mr. Collins smiled, his expression warm. "I was just about to leave, but I saw you walking by," he said, pausing and looking Tyson over. "I wanted to thank you again, Tyson. You have no idea how much it means to us. My wife is doing much better now, thanks to you." Tyson shrugged, feeling his face flush. "I'm glad she's okay." Mr. Collins nodded, his eyes softening. "Listen, I also wanted to ask you something." He gestured toward the benches near the building entrance. "Do you have a moment to sit down?" Tyson nodded, curious but also a bit nervous. He followed Mr. Collins to the bench, sitting down beside him. The businessman looked thoughtful, his gaze drifting for a moment before he turned back to Tyson. "What you did for Anna, it wasn't just brave. It was selfless. And when I asked you what you wanted in return, you didn't ask for anything for yourself. You asked for your mom," Mr. Collins said, his voice filled with admiration. "That's rare, Tyson. It really struck me." Tyson looked down, his hands fidgeting in his lap. I wanted to help her. She's worked so hard, and we've been struggling. I figured maybe you could do something." Mr. Collins nodded. "And I'm glad you did. Your mom has been doing great. She's a hard worker, and everyone here already speaks highly of her." Tyson's heart swelled at that. He knew how much this meant to his mom, how much it meant to both of them. "I'm glad she's doing well," Tyson said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Mr. Collins leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at Tyson, his expression serious now. "But I'm not done helping yet, Tyson. I want to do something for you." Tyson blinked, taken aback. "For me?" "Yes, for you," Mr. Collins said, his voice firm. "You've given a lot to help others, but now I want to help you. You're a smart kid, Tyson. You care about your family. You care about doing what's right. That's something worth investing in." Tyson felt his stomach tighten. He didn't know what to say. He didn't even know what to ask for. I don't know what I need," he said honestly, his voice barely a whisper. Mr. Collins smiled, nodding. "That's all right. Let me ask you this, what are your dreams, Tyson? What do you want for your future?" Tyson hesitated, his mind swirling. He had never really thought about it, not like that. Dreams felt like something for other people, something out of reach. He had always been too busy worrying about how they would pay rent, how his mom was going to keep the lights on. Dreams weren't something he had the luxury of considering. I don't know, Tyson admitted. I just want to help my mom. I want things to get better for her. Mr. Collins nodded, understanding in his eyes. And what about school? You're a bright kid. Do you like learning? Tyson shrugged. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I like reading. I go to the library a lot. But I've never really thought about school like something that could lead to anything else. Mr. Collins smiled. You remind me of myself at your age, hungry for knowledge, but life kept throwing obstacles in the way, he said, leaning back against the bench. How would you feel about getting some help with school? A scholarship, maybe? Tyson blinked, his heart pounding. A scholarship? Yes, Mr. Collins said. I'd like to make sure you get the education you deserve, Tyson. You're a smart kid, and you shouldn't be limited by things you can't control. I'm willing to help you make sure you can focus on school, on your future. Tyson stared at Mr. Collins, the weight of his words sinking in. It felt like everything was happening too fast, his mom's job, now this. It was almost too much to believe. You really mean that? Tyson asked, his voice trembling. You'd do that for me? Mr. Collins nodded, his eyes sincere. Absolutely. It's the least I can do. You've already proven that you're willing to work hard, that you care about your family. I want to see you succeed, Tyson. Tyson swallowed, feeling tears prick at his eyes. He looked away, trying to keep himself composed. He had never thought anyone would offer him something like this. It didn't feel real. He thought about his mom, how happy she had been just to have a job. How she always told him that education was the one thing no one could take away from him. Tyson nodded slowly, turning back to Mr. Collins. I'd like that. I want to do something with my life. I want to make my mom proud. Mr. Collins smiled, reaching over and putting a hand on Tyson's shoulder. You already have, Tyson. And I have no doubt that you're going to do great things. Tyson took a deep breath, the tension that had been building in his chest slowly releasing. For the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel, hope. Real hope that things could get better, that there was more for him beyond the struggles and the fear. Mr. Collins stood up, extending his hand to Tyson. We'll start working on it right away. I'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed. Tyson stood up, shaking Mr. Collins's hand firmly. Thank you, sir, he said, his voice steady, filled with gratitude. Mr. Collins smiled, nodding. You deserve it, Tyson. Now go home and tell your mom the good news. I'll be in touch with more details soon. Tyson nodded, turning to leave. As he walked away, he felt a sense of weightlessness, like he was walking on air. He couldn't wait to get home and tell his mom. He couldn't wait to see her smile, to share this hope with her. For once, it felt like the world wasn't against them. It felt like they finally had a chance. Tyson raced home, his heart pounding with excitement and disbelief. He was carrying something precious, a hope he had never truly felt before. A future he could finally see taking shape. He couldn't wait to see his mom's face when he told her the news. He had always tried to protect her from worry, tried to lighten the burden she carried. But today, he was bringing her something she hadn't had in a long time, real hope. He reached their building, his feet pounding up the worn concrete steps. He swung open the door to their apartment, calling out as soon as he entered. Mom! Mom! Are you home? She came out from the small kitchen, a dish towel in her hand, her hair pulled back. She looked surprised at his energy. Tyson, what's going on, sweetheart? She asked, her eyebrows knitting together. Tyson paused, trying to catch his breath, a grin spreading across his face. You won't believe it. Mr. Collins, he offered me a scholarship. He wants to help me with school, Mom, his voice cracked a little, the excitement spilling over. His mom stared at him, her eyes wide. She blinked, as if she wasn't sure she heard him right. A scholarship, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Tyson, are you serious? Tyson nodded, his grin not fading for a second. Yeah, Mom, he said. He's going to help me get the education I deserve. I don't have to worry about school fees or anything like that. It's real, Mom. His mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. She walked over to him, pulling him into a tight hug. Tyson could feel her shaking, her body trembling as she held him. Oh, Tyson, she whispered, her voice breaking. This is everything we hoped for. He hugged her back just as tightly, feeling his own eyes sting. We're going to be okay, Mom. I know we are, he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, a watery smile on her face. You've always been so strong, Tyson. You've always looked out for me. And now, look at you. Look at what you've done. She cupped his face, her eyes filled with pride. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Tyson swallowed, nodding. He could feel his throat tighten with emotion. He had done it for her, for them. And now, for once, things were actually looking up. They sat down at the small kitchen table, his mom still holding his hand as he told her everything. How Mr. Collins had stopped him, how he had asked what Tyson wanted for his future, how he had offered to make sure Tyson could focus on school, on getting the education he had always dreamed of but never thought possible. His mom listened, nodding, her eyes never leaving his face. She looked overwhelmed but happy, her smile growing wider with each word. This is going to change everything, Tyson. You're going to be able to do anything you want now, she said, her voice filled with awe. Tyson smiled, but it was a different kind of smile, one filled with determination. I'm going to make the most of this, Mom. I promise. I'm not going to waste it. His mom nodded, squeezing his hand. I know you won't. You've got so much potential, Tyson, and now you're finally going to get the chance to show it. They spent the rest of the evening talking, planning, dreaming. For the first time, they allowed themselves to think about the future without the shadow of rent notices and overdue bills hanging over them. It was strange, almost unreal, to be talking about school, about college, about possibilities that had once seemed so far away. The next day, Tyson woke up early, a new energy buzzing through him. He got ready for school, pulling on his clothes and packing his backpack with a sense of purpose. His mom was already up, her uniform neatly pressed as she prepared to leave for her shift at Collins Enterprise. She smiled at him, a twinkle in her eyes that Tyson hadn't seen in a long time. Ready for another day, kiddo? She asked, her voice light. Tyson nodded. Yeah, I think I actually am. He grabbed his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder. I'll see you later, Mom. Good luck today. You too, sweetheart. I'll be thinking about you, she said, giving him a quick hug before they headed out the door. As Tyson walked to school, everything seemed different, the buildings looked less imposing, the people passing by seemed less distant. He even found himself smiling at strangers, feeling the weight that had always pressed on his shoulders beginning to lift. When he reached school, he walked into the building, his steps more confident than they had ever been before. His classes seemed to go by faster, and for once, Tyson found himself actually enjoying the lessons. He had always liked learning, but now there was a purpose to it. Now there was a goal. He wasn't just going through the motions anymore, he was preparing for something bigger. At lunchtime, Tyson sat down at his usual spot, but this time, Marcus and Jonah were already there, waving him over. Tyson walked up, setting his tray down, and they grinned at him. Dude, we heard about the scholarship thing, Marcus said, his eyes wide with admiration. That's insane, man. You're going to go places. Tyson smiled, a little shy. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I still can't really believe it. Jonah nudged him. You're like a real-life hero, dude. First you saved someone, now you're getting a scholarship. What's next? Are you going to be president or something? Tyson laughed, shaking his head. Nah, nothing like that. I'm just trying to do my best. They talked through lunch, and for the first time, Tyson felt like he was fitting in. He wasn't just the quiet kid who kept his head down, he was someone people noticed, someone people respected. It felt strange, but it also felt good. He was starting to see himself the way others saw him, strong, capable, deserving of this chance. When school ended, Tyson headed home, his head filled with plans for the future. He had so much to think about, so many possibilities that had never been there before. He thought about his mom, how hard she had worked for so long, how much she had sacrificed, and now, finally, he was in a position to give back. He reached their building, climbing the steps 2 at a time. As he unlocked the door and stepped inside, he found his mom sitting at the table, her work clothes still on, her face flushed from the day. She looked up at him, her eyes lighting up. "Hey, sweetheart. How was your day?" she asked, her voice warm. Tyson smiled, dropping his backpack on the floor. "It was good, Mom. Really good. And I was thinking maybe we should celebrate, just a little. You know?" His mom raised an eyebrow, a smile playing on her lips. "Celebrate? And what did you have in mind, Mr. Fancy Scholarship?" Tyson laughed. "I don't know. Maybe we could order a pizza or something. Just for tonight. It's been a long time since we did something like that." His mom's eyes softened, and she nodded. "You know what, Tyson? I think that's a great idea. We deserve it." They ordered the pizza, and as they sat together that night, eating and talking and laughing, Tyson felt something inside him settle. For once, they weren't just surviving, they were living. They had fought so hard to get here, and now, they were finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. As the night drew to a close, Tyson lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, a smile on his face. He could still feel the warmth of his mom's hug, the taste of the pizza still lingering. He thought about the future, about the opportunities ahead, and he knew that he wasn't going to let any of it go to waste. He was going to work hard, make something of himself, and make his mom proud. The next morning, Tyson woke up with a sense of purpose that seemed to fill his entire body. He had never really been excited to get out of bed, but now everything felt different. He wasn't just getting through each day anymore, he was actively working towards something bigger. He knew that this was just the beginning of the changes in their lives, and he was ready to embrace it all. His mom had already left for her shift by the time Tyson got up, but she had left a note on the counter. He picked it up, reading her careful handwriting. "Have a great day, Tyson. I know you're going to do amazing things. Love, Mom." Tyson smiled, slipping the note into his pocket. He grabbed his backpack and left the apartment, the early morning sun warming his face as he walked down the steps. He was ready for whatever the day would bring. When he got to school, he noticed more of the kids looking at him, some of them even waving or nodding. It still felt strange to have all this attention, but he was getting used to it. He waved back, his steps steady as he made his way to his first class. Miss Alvarez greeted him warmly when he walked in, her eyes lighting up. "Tyson, I heard about the scholarship offer." "That's incredible news," she said, her voice filled with genuine happiness. Tyson felt his face warm a little. "Yeah, thank you, Miss Alvarez. I still can't really believe it." She smiled at him, nodding. "You deserve it, Tyson. You've worked hard, and this is just the beginning of all the wonderful things you're going to accomplish." Tyson took his seat, pulling out his notebook. Miss Alvarez's words echoed in his mind, just the beginning. Asterisk. He liked the sound of that. He liked the idea that he was finally getting a chance to prove himself. The classes went by quickly, and for the first time, Tyson found himself enjoying the lessons. He wasn't just doing the work to get by, he was thinking about how this knowledge could help him, how it could open doors he had never thought were available to him. He participated more in class, answering questions and even asking a few of his own. His teachers seemed surprised but pleased, and Tyson could feel the respect growing in the room. At lunchtime, Tyson walked to the cafeteria feeling more comfortable than he had in weeks. He grabbed his lunch tray and headed over to the table where Marcus, Jonah, and a couple of other kids from his class were sitting. They looked up, waving him over. "Hey, Tyson," Marcus called out, grinning. "How's it going, man?" Tyson smiled, setting his tray down and taking a seat. "It's good. Things are finally starting to look up." Jonah nodded, leaning forward. "Yeah, I heard about that scholarship thing. That's seriously awesome, man. You're going to be set." Tyson shrugged, feeling the warmth of their words. "I'm just grateful for the chance. I'm going to work hard, make the most of it." One of the other kids at the table, a girl named Kayla, smiled at Tyson. "It's really inspiring, what you did. Not just with the scholarship, but helping that woman. Not everyone would have stepped up like that." Tyson glanced down at his tray, feeling a little embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what felt right, you know? I didn't think about it." Marcus nodded, giving him a playful nudge. "Yeah, well, not everyone thinks like that. You've got something special, man." Tyson didn't know what to say, so he just smiled and nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him that he hadn't felt in a long time. It felt good to be seen, to be appreciated, not just for what he had done, but for who he was. After lunch, Tyson headed to his next class. He was sitting at his desk when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He discreetly pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hi Tyson, it's Mr. Collins. I wanted to let you know that I've arranged a meeting for you this weekend with a representative from the Scholarship Foundation. They're excited to meet you and discuss the opportunities available to you. Let me know if that works for you." Tyson's heart skipped a beat. He quickly typed out a response, his hands shaking slightly. "Thank you so much, Mr. Collins. That sounds great. I'll be there." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his mind buzzing with excitement. A meeting with the Scholarship Foundation. This was it, this was the start of everything. He could hardly believe it was happening, that his life was finally starting to change. The rest of the day passed in a blur, and when the final bell rang, Tyson headed out of the school building, a smile on his face. He walked home, the sun beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He felt lighter, like he was floating. He couldn't wait to tell his mom about the meeting. When he got home, his mom was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a tired but satisfied look on her face. She looked up as Tyson walked in, her smile growing when she saw him. "Hey, sweetheart. How was school?" she asked, her voice warm. Tyson set his backpack down, walking over to her. "It was good, Mom. I've got some news, actually." He pulled out his phone, showing her the message from Mr. Collins. Her eyes widened as she read it, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Tyson, that's amazing. A meeting with the Scholarship Foundation. This is really happening," she said, looking up at him, her eyes shining. "I'm so proud of you." Tyson grinned, feeling his chest swell with pride. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who's always believed in me." She reached out, taking his hand and squeezing it. "You've always been special, Tyson. And now the rest of the world is going to see it too." They spent the evening talking about the meeting, about what Tyson should say, about the opportunities that might come from it. His mom kept reminding him how proud she was, how much she believed in him. Tyson soaked it all in, feeling the love and support that had always been there, even in the toughest times. The weekend came quickly, and Tyson found himself standing in front of a tall office building, his heart pounding. He was wearing his best clothes, an old button-up shirt and a pair of pants that were a little too short, but it was the best he had. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The door to the building opened, and Mr. Collins stepped out, a smile on his face. "Tyson, glad you could make it," he said, walking over and shaking Tyson's hand firmly. Tyson smiled, nodding. "Thank you for arranging this, Mr. Collins. I really appreciate it." Mr. Collins patted his shoulder. "You've earned this, Tyson. Now, come on. Let's go inside and meet the folks from the foundation. They're excited to meet you." Tyson followed Mr. Collins inside, his hands feeling clammy. He walked through the lobby, the polished floors gleaming under the bright lights. Mr. Collins led him to an elevator, pressing the button for one of the upper floors. Tyson could feel his heart racing, the anticipation building with every floor they passed. When the elevator doors opened, Mr. Collins led Tyson down a hallway to a large conference room. There were a few people sitting at the table, a man and two women, all of them dressed in business attire. They looked up as Tyson entered, smiles spreading across their faces. "Tyson, it's a pleasure to meet you," the man said, standing up and extending his hand. "I'm Mr. Lawrence, and this is Miss Harper and Miss Williams. We've heard a lot about you." Tyson shook their hands, his voice shaky as he said, "It's nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me." Mr. Lawrence gestured to the table. "Please, have a seat. We're excited to talk to you about the scholarship program and what it could mean for your future." Tyson sat down, trying to calm his nerves. He listened as they explained the details of the scholarship, how it would cover his school fees, provide him with support for his studies, and even help him get into a good college. They talked about the opportunities that would be open to him, the doors that could be unlocked. Tyson felt a surge of emotion as he listened. This was more than he had ever dreamed of. This was more than he had ever dreamed of. This was a chance to break free from the cycle of struggle, a chance to build a future that wasn't defined by hardship. Tyson felt tears prick at his eyes, but he blinked them away, nodding as they spoke. When they finished, Mr. Lawrence smiled at him. "Tyson, we believe in you. We believe you have the potential to do great things, and we want to help you achieve that. Are you ready to take this journey?" Tyson swallowed, his throat tight with emotion. He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes. I'm ready." Mr. Collins, who had been sitting quietly beside him, gave Tyson an encouraging nod. "You're going to do amazing things, Tyson. I have no doubt about that." Tyson left the meeting with a stack of papers and a heart full of hope. As he walked out of the building with Mr. Collins, the sun shone brightly, warming his face. Mr. Collins shook his hand again, smiling at him. "This is just the beginning, Tyson. You've got a bright future ahead of you." Tyson nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, Mr. Collins, for everything." As Tyson walked home, he felt lighter than he ever had before. He couldn't wait to tell his mom. He couldn't wait to share the news with her. This was it. This was the new beginning they had been waiting for. He knew that no matter what, he was going to make the most of it. The next morning, Tyson woke up with a surge of excitement and nerves coursing through him. The meeting with the Scholarship Foundation had left him energized, but even with all the hope, there were still parts of him that worried about the changes coming, the challenges he would need to face. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his breakfast, just toast and scrambled eggs. His mom was across from him, sipping her coffee, her eyes flicking over to him every few moments. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice gentle. "You've been awfully quiet this morning." Tyson looked up, giving her a small smile. "Yeah, I'm good, Mom. Just thinking about everything, I guess. It's a lot." She reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "I know it is. But remember, you don't have to do it alone. We're in this together." Tyson nodded, squeezing her hand back. "Yeah, I know." After finishing breakfast, Tyson grabbed his backpack, ready to head to school. His mom gave him a hug before he left, her arm wrapping around him tightly. "Just remember, Tyson, you're capable of anything. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." He left their apartment with those words echoing in his mind as he walked to school. He thought about the journey ahead of him. A scholarship meant new opportunities, but it also meant stepping out of his comfort zone, meeting new people, and facing new challenges. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew that whatever happened, he was ready to fight for it. When he got to school, Tyson could already feel the difference. People were still looking at him, some whispering about the scholarship. He caught snippets of conversation, kids talking about how lucky he was, how amazing it was that he had been chosen for something so big. Tyson tried to ignore the looks and comments, but it was hard. He had never been the center of attention, and now it felt like everyone was watching his every move. As he walked into his first class, Miss Alvarez smiled at him, her eyes bright with encouragement. "Tyson, I'm glad to see you. How are you feeling today?" Tyson shrugged, giving her a small smile. "I'm all right, Miss Alvarez. Just trying to take everything in." She nodded, her gaze soft. "That's understandable. It's a lot to handle, but just remember you've got a lot of people rooting for you, and we all believe in you." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of classes and assignments. Tyson tried his best to focus, but his mind kept drifting to the scholarship, to what was coming next. He knew he was going to have to work harder than ever before, and part of him felt scared. What if he couldn't do it? What if he let everyone down? At lunchtime, Tyson found himself sitting alone. Marcus and Jonah weren't there that day. They both had a group project to work on, and Tyson felt the weight of all the changes pressing down on him. He picked at his food, barely eating, his thoughts swirling. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the table, and Tyson looked up to see Kayla standing there, her tray in her hands. She smiled at him. "Mind if I sit here?" Tyson blinked, a little surprised. Sure." Kayla set her tray down, sitting across from him. She took a bite of her sandwich before looking at him, her expression thoughtful. "You look like you could use some company," she said, her voice gentle. Tyson shrugged, trying to smile. "Yeah, I guess. It's just been a lot, you know?" Kayla nodded. "I get it. A lot of people talking, a lot of expectations, it's not easy." Tyson looked down at his tray, fiddling with his fork. I don't want to let anyone down." Kayla leaned forward, her expression serious. "Listen, Tyson. No one's expecting you to be perfect. The fact that you've come this far is already amazing. You just have to keep being you, keep trying your best. That's all anyone can ask." Tyson glanced up at her, her words sinking in. "Yeah, I guess you're right." She smiled. "I know I'm right. And you're not alone, okay? If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Tyson nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. It felt good to know that someone understood, that he wasn't alone in feeling overwhelmed. "Thanks, Kayla. That means a lot." They spent the rest of lunch talking, and for the first time that day, Tyson felt a little more at ease. Kayla was easy to talk to. She made him laugh, made him forget about the pressure, even if just for a little while. By the time the bell rang, Tyson felt a little lighter, a little more ready to face the rest of the day. After school, Tyson decided to stop by the library. He had always found comfort in books, in losing himself in stories, in learning about the world. He walked through the aisles, running his fingers over the spines of the books, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. He picked up a book about science, flipping through the pages as he found a quiet corner to sit. He was absorbed in the book when he heard someone clear their throat. He looked up to see Mr. Collins standing there, a smile on his face. "Tyson," Mr. Collins said, his voice warm. "I thought I might find you here." When they finally stood up to leave, Mr. Collins gave Tyson a pat on the shoulder. "Remember, Tyson, one step at a time. You've got this." Tyson nodded, a small smile on his face. "Thanks, Mr. Collins. I'll do my best." He walked home that evening with a sense of hope building inside him. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew that he had people in his corner, people who believed in him, and that made all the difference. He had come so far, and now he had the chance to go even further. As he reached the door of their apartment, he took a deep breath, knowing he was ready for whatever came next. His mom was already home, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. She looked up as he walked in, a smile spreading across her face. "Hey, sweetheart. How was your day?" Tyson set his backpack down and smiled at her. "It was good, Mom. I met with Mr. Collins again. We talked about everything, and he believes in me. He said I'm on the right track, that I'm strong enough to handle this." His mom's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. She stood up and walked over, pulling him into a hug. "You are strong, Tyson. You always have been. And I'm so proud of you for never giving up." Tyson held her tightly, feeling the weight of everything he had been through. The struggles, the hardships, the moments where he wondered if they'd make it. But now, with everything starting to change, he knew that they had a shot at a better future. "I'm not giving up, Mom," he said softly. "I promise." They spent the evening talking, making plans for what came next. Tyson told her about the meeting at the library with Mr. Collins and the encouragement he had received. His mom listened intently, her eyes shining with hope as he spoke. "Do you know what this means, Tyson?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "It means we can dream again. We can think about a future where things are different. Where you can go to college, where we don't have to worry every day about bills and rent. It means we can finally breathe." Tyson nodded, his chest swelling with hope. "We're going to be okay, Mom. I know we are." The next morning, Tyson's mom left for work, her steps lighter than they had been in weeks. Tyson walked to school with a renewed sense of purpose, feeling ready to face whatever challenges came his way. As he entered the building, he felt the eyes of his classmates on him again. The whispers and stares were still there, but now they didn't make him feel nervous. They made him feel strong. In class, Tyson found himself raising his hand more often, answering questions with confidence. Miss Alvarez noticed it, her eyes shining with pride. "Good job, Tyson. You're really starting to come out of your shell." He smiled back, the words filling him with a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about the scholarship anymore, it was about proving to himself that he could do this. That he was more than just a kid from a rough neighborhood. He was capable, and he was ready to chase his dreams. At lunch, Marcus and Jonah came over, their expressions friendly and welcoming. They sat down across from Tyson, their voices casual and full of questions about how he was doing. Tyson found himself laughing and joking with them, sharing stories and plans for the weekend. It felt good to connect with people, to feel like he belonged. "Hey, Tyson," Jonah said, nudging him. "You know, we're proud of you, man. You've been through a lot, but you're still here, still fighting." Tyson looked at his friends, feeling a sense of gratitude. "Thanks, Jonah. That means a lot." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Tyson got up and walked to his next class, a spring in his step. He was more confident now, more sure of who he was and who he wanted to be. He was ready to take on the challenges ahead, to grow, to learn, and to make the most of this opportunity. When school ended, Tyson walked home, taking a different route that led him past the park. He saw a group of kids playing basketball, their laughter filling the air. For a moment, he stood there, watching them, thinking about how far he had come. "Hey, Tyson." He turned to see Kayla jogging toward him, a smile on her face. "Hey, Kayla," he said, surprised but pleased to see her. "I was just thinking about you," she said, stopping in front of him. "How are things going? Are you hanging in there?" Tyson nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, I am. Things are actually going really well. I'm excited about the future, you know?" Kayla's eyes lit up. "That's great, Tyson. I knew you'd get there. You're stronger than you know." They stood there for a moment, talking about school, about plans for the weekend, and about what they wanted to do in the future. It felt good to share these moments, to think about the future without fear. For the first time in a long time, Tyson felt like he was on the right path. When he got home, his mom was there, sitting at the table and flipping through a job posting on her tablet. She looked up when he walked in, her face lighting up. "Hey, sweetheart. How was your day?" "Great, Mom," Tyson said, sitting down next to her. "Things are getting better every day. I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, we're going to be okay." His mom smiled, her eyes glistening. "I know we are, Tyson. I know we are." That night, as Tyson lay in bed, he thought about everything that had happened, the help from Mr. Collins, the scholarship, his mom's job, the people who had believed in him. It was all coming together, piece by piece. He could see the future now, not as an impossible dream but as something that was within reach. He had a chance, and he was going to take it. No matter what obstacles came his way, he knew he could face them. Because he wasn't alone anymore. He had his mom, his friends, and the people who believed in him. And that was more than enough to keep moving forward. He closed his eyes, a smile on his face, and whispered to himself, "We're going to be okay." The next few weeks passed in a blur of new routines and small victories. Tyson's days were filled with school, studying, and helping his mom around the apartment when she got home. He felt a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt before, and it was invigorating. Every morning, he woke up with a feeling of hope in his chest, ready to face whatever the day would bring. One afternoon, Tyson was at the library, studying for an upcoming math test. The library had become his sanctuary, a place where he could focus and let his mind wander without distraction. He was deep into his work when he heard someone call his name. He looked up to see Mr. Collins walking toward him, a friendly smile on his face. "Tyson, how's it going?" Mr. Collins asked, settling into the chair across from him. Tyson's face lit up with surprise and happiness. "Mr. Collins. It's going great. I just came here to study." Mr. Collins nodded, looking at the textbooks spread out before Tyson. "I can see that. You're dedicated, and that's exactly what it takes to succeed." Tyson smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Thanks. I'm trying my best." Mr. Collins leaned forward, his expression turning serious but kind. "I'm glad to see it, Tyson. I wanted to let you know that the Scholarship Foundation has approved your funding. Everything is set. You don't have to worry about school expenses anymore." Tyson's eyes widened, and he could barely contain his excitement. "Really? That's amazing. Thank you so much for helping make this happen." Mr. Collins gave a small nod. "You earned it, Tyson. Your hard work and determination spoke for themselves. Now, I'm here to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." The conversation shifted to talk of future goals and opportunities. Mr. Collins mentioned internships, summer programs, and college applications. Tyson listened with wide eyes, imagining the possibilities that were suddenly within reach. For the first time, he felt like the future was his to shape, not just a distant, unreachable dream. When Mr. Collins left, Tyson returned to his books, but his heart felt lighter. He was determined to make the most of everything being offered to him. He couldn't let this chance slip away. The following weekend, Tyson and his mom attended a community event in the neighborhood. The park was bustling with people, families enjoying picnics, kids running around, and vendors selling food and crafts. It was a welcome break from their usual routine, and Tyson felt grateful to share the moment with his mom. "Look at all these people, Tyson," his mom said, smiling as she watched the laughter around them. "It feels like we're finally part of something bigger." Tyson nodded, looking around at the families and friends enjoying the day. "We are, Mom. We really are." They grabbed a plate of food from one of the food trucks, sitting down at a picnic table. Tyson's mom watched him, a proud, contented look on her face. "I'm so proud of you, she said, her voice quiet. "You've come so far." Tyson smiled, his eyes meeting hers. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You're the reason I keep going." They sat there for a while, sharing stories and laughter, enjoying the sunshine. For the first time in a long time, Tyson felt a sense of peace wash over him. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living. The school year was soon over, and Tyson found himself looking forward to the summer. He had already started the application process for college, with Mr. Collins's guidance and his mom's unwavering support. Tyson spent hours studying, making sure his grades were as strong as they could be. He knew it would take hard work, but he was ready for it. One evening, Tyson sat in the living room, going over his math homework. The television played quietly in the background, but Tyson was too focused to pay it much attention. His mom walked in, looking exhausted from her shift but with a smile on her face. "Hey, Tyson. How's it going?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door and walking over to him. Tyson looked up, smiling. "Good, Mom. Just finishing up some homework." She nodded, sitting down on the couch and rubbing her sore feet. "You're doing so well, Tyson. I can see how hard you're working, and I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Tyson said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm just trying to make sure we have a future. I don't want us to have to worry about everything the way we did before." She reached over and put her hand on his. "We're already on the right path, Tyson. And it's because of you. You've given us hope again." Tyson felt a wave of emotion wash over him, his eyes stinging with tears he couldn't hold back. "I promise I'm going to make it, Mom. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we're okay." His mom's eyes met his, and in that moment, Tyson knew he was going to keep that promise. No matter what challenges came his way, he was ready to face them. He was ready to build the life they both deserved. The days turned into weeks, and Tyson's determination grew stronger. He kept up with his studies, volunteered at the community center, and worked with his mom to make their apartment feel more like home. They painted the walls, fixed up the furniture, and even started planning small outings to explore the city. Tyson's life was transforming, and it was all because he had taken that leap of faith, had chosen to help someone else, and in doing so, had changed his own destiny. One day, as Tyson was walking home from school, he passed by the park where he had first met Mr. Collins. The place looked the same, but to Tyson, it felt different. He stopped for a moment, taking in the sounds of children playing, families enjoying the day, and the distant sound of music drifting from a street performer. He felt a sense of accomplishment and peace settle in his chest. "Hey, Tyson." He turned to see Kayla running toward him, a smile on her face. "Hey, Kayla," he said, returning her smile. "Got any plans for the weekend?" she asked, eyes sparkling with excitement. Tyson grinned, feeling the weight of all his hard work and hope come together. "Yeah, actually. I was thinking of going to the community event tomorrow. Want to join us?" Kayla nodded, her smile widening. "I'd love to." As they walked home together, Tyson couldn't help but think about all that had happened. He had come a long way from that day when he had helped Mrs. Collins, and it wasn't just about the scholarship or the opportunities, it was about the journey, the people he had met, and the strength he had found within himself. For the first time, he felt like he was living the life he was meant to have, a life built on hope, hard work, and the love of those who believed in him. And as he walked down the street, side by side with Kayla, he knew that this was just the beginning. The summer stretched out before Tyson, filled with opportunities and the promise of new beginnings. With the scholarship in place and his mom working steadily at her job, they were finally starting to feel secure. The worry that had once weighed heavily on Tyson's mind had lessened, and he could finally focus on what came next. Every day, Tyson kept himself busy. He volunteered at the community center, helping with tutoring programs for younger kids. It felt good to give back, to help others just as he had been helped. It reminded him of the days when he was younger, struggling in school, wishing someone would lend him a hand. Now, he was that hand, reaching out to others who needed it. One afternoon, while he was helping a group of kids with their math homework, Mr. Collins stopped by the Tyson knelt beside the boy and started to explain the math problem, breaking it down step by step. Mr. Collins watched for a moment before turning to talk with the community center director, Mrs. Bennett. They exchanged a few words before Mr. Collins turned back to Tyson, his expression thoughtful. "Keep up the great work," Mr. Collins said before leaving, patting Tyson on the shoulder as he walked out. Tyson felt a surge of pride and determination. He was doing what he loved, and he was making a difference. That evening, as he walked home, he was greeted by his mom, who was busy preparing dinner. She looked up at him, smiling. "How was today, Tyson?" she asked as he set his backpack down. "Good, Mom," he said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "I helped out at the center, and Mr. Collins came by to check in. It felt nice to know he's proud of me." His mom's eyes shone with emotion as she reached out and hugged him. "You've come so far, Tyson. And you're making a difference, not just for us but for others too. I'm so proud of you." The days turned into weeks, and soon, the start of school was upon them. Tyson couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. This was the start of a new chapter, one that would lead him to college and to new experiences. He had already started studying for the entrance exams, using books he borrowed from the library and getting help from his teachers. The night before school started, Tyson sat at his desk, looking over the notes he had made. His mom came in and leaned against the doorway. "Can't believe it's already time, huh?" she said, her voice a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "Yeah," Tyson said, turning to look at her. "It's a little scary, but I'm ready. I know this is the first step to everything we've been dreaming about." His mom smiled, stepping into the room and giving him a hug. "You're going to do great, Tyson. Just remember to stay true to yourself, and you'll be fine." The next morning, Tyson woke up early, the early morning sun peeking through the window. He pulled on his clothes, a mixture of excitement and nerves building in his chest. His mom was already up, making breakfast, and when he walked into the kitchen, she was there with a smile and a plate of eggs and toast. "Good luck today, Tyson," she said, placing her hand on his. "I know you're going to make the most of this." Tyson smiled back, feeling the weight of her words. "Thanks, Mom. I'll make you proud." When he left for school, he walked with his head held high, his backpack slung over his shoulder. The familiar streets of the neighborhood looked different to him now, brighter, full of potential. He passed by the park, the place where everything had changed, and took a moment to stop and look around. He could still see the memory of Mrs. Collins there, the fear in her eyes, the way he had reached out to help her. It was that moment that had set everything in motion, that had brought him to where he was now. When he arrived at school, the halls were buzzing with the chatter of students. Tyson walked down the corridors, feeling a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. He had come a long way, and now it was time to take the next step. "Tyson." He turned and saw Kayla approaching, her smile bright and welcoming. "Hey, Kayla," Tyson said, grinning. "Ready for the new school year?" "Definitely," she said, nodding. "I'm glad we have classes together this year. We're going to make it through, no matter what." Tyson laughed, feeling a sense of comfort wash over him. He was ready for the challenges ahead, ready to keep working hard and to keep moving forward. The future was no longer something he feared, it was something he was eager to reach for. As the day went on, Tyson found himself facing the new year with renewed determination. His teachers greeted him with smiles, and he noticed the looks of respect from classmates who knew his story. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving. That night, Tyson sat at his desk, going over his homework and making plans for his future. He thought about the opportunities that lay ahead, about college and the life he was building. He thought about the people who had supported him, the ones who had believed in him even when he had doubted himself. And most of all, he thought about his mom, who had been there every step of the way. "Thanks for believing in me, Mom," he whispered to the quiet room. "I'm going to make it worth it."